If your PT told you to do eccentric heel drops 180 times a day, to stop and listen to this, because while eccentric heel drops are not necessarily bad, they're actually really good for you. There's a few things that your PT missing, right? It's just incomplete information. So I worked with runners who did that exact protocol for a year and their Achilles still hurts. In this video today, I want to explore why that might be and how you can get past that ceiling effect when you've done those eccentric heel drops for years. It's not because you did eccentric heel drops incorrectly or the PT is wrong. According to research, eccentric heel drops remain one of the best ways to load your Achilles, but there's a few mistakes that people make with heel drop. There are 3 gaps that I want you to understand. 1, volume. The volume was never sustainable, and then when you get to the point when you've done so many for so long, you actually plateau. The protocol didn't match the specific injury. The eccentric heel drops only work for a certain type of Achilles pain. And finally, the load was never enough to meet the demands that the tendon was asking for. So when you don't load it heavy enough, the tendon is not going to respond. It's just going to stay stagnant. That's what runners inside the Reforge Achilles system do. They close those 3 gaps with eccentric loading, and we identify whether eccentric loading is even the right approach for that Achilles pain. There's a new approach, a relatively new approach that I've seen work so much better for runners. Marty had been dealing with Achilles pain since 2019. It started after he switched to higher heel drop running shoes, and it never went away. He saw a PT, he tried cupping, he's got a blood injection, MRIs, and ultrasound confirmed tendinopathy, thickened tendon with inflammation. He had the midportion type on both sides. In 2022, he had a big mountain climb, 24 hours of hiking, and stiff mountaineering boots, and that made it 100 times worse. And after that, it wasn't even a running problem anymore. It was a pain problem that prevented him from hiking and running. And Marty told me that the only thing that ever helped in the years of trying things was heavy heel raises, holding a 35 to 45 pound kettlebell one leg at a time. But he was doing it with no structure, no consistency, no tempo, no plan to add load or how far to push it. He was onto something real. He recognized that there's value in loading heavy and progressively, but he needed a exact system. So that's what I want to show you today. It's a system that he uses called Reforge Achilles system, and it's 12 weeks of structured loading and coaching on a one-on-one basis. So I'm going to show you how you can get past the eccentric piece and get into more of a structure loading plan for your midportion Achilles tendinopathy. And I'm going to show you why eccentric heel drops don't work for insertional Achilles pain. So let's talk about what's actually happening inside the tendon when you load it. There's a chemical response called Mechanotransduction. It's a process that tells tendon cells to remodel and adapt. But in order to trigger that remodeling switch to mechanotransduction, you need to have mechanical load. And that's where heavy weights, a heavy load comes in. And it's not just picking a heavy load and then sticking with it for 12 weeks. It's also about adjusting your weight and progressing so that you're constantly adding heavier and heavier weights to continue to trigger that mechanotransduction process. Research on tendon loading puts that threshold at roughly 80% of a 1 rep max. Simply put, we need a lot of load to strain the tendon. The classic eccentric heel drop protocol was never built around that number. It was built around volume, 180 reps per day, as per the Alfredson protocol, which is the most famous Achilles loading protocol. And the theory is that loading alone will clear out the abnormal blood vessel and nerve ingrowths that tends to form in a degenerative tendon, and that extra structure which don't provide strength to help transfer forces from your calf muscles to your foot, they can really irritate the tendon. So the idea from Dr. Alfredson from Sweden, who developed the eccentric heel drop protocol is that it's designed to clear out those weaker structure and promote tendon remodeling, which is what we want. But there's a nuance. Even Dr. Alfredson says that it only works for certain cases. Those who have midportion Achilles tendinopathy, those who can tolerate the volume, those who can tolerate the pain that comes with the exercise, because he advocates that you should train through pain regardless. But this is inherently the problem. Most people can't do 180 calories a day. The volume is just simply too high, and some people can't tolerate that pain, which I totally understand. So it's about sustainability and making sure that you don't burn out for the rehab after 3 weeks, 5 weeks, because that's not enough time to actually load the Achilles tendon. The other thing is, as I mentioned, eccentric heel drops are not designed for exertional Achilles tendinopathy. The reason being that the heel drop exercise requires a deficit where you're off a step and you're putting your ankle into dorsiflexion. And that very motion is actually what triggers irritation and compression forces at the insertional site. You can't really do eccentric heel drop from a flat ground because you need to lower the Achilles tendon in a stretch position. That's how it's going to essentially contract and break apart that degenerative tissue and trigger that mechanotransduction. But there's a way that I'll show you how to load the insertional Achilles site more effectively. And then finally, you need to get heavy. Right? Eccentric heel drops are often done with body weight or light weights, and you stick with that for a long period of time. But at the end of the day, tendons need load and they need progressive load. It needs to go heavy. My criteria for building that weight is that the weight itself should reach 1.5 times your body weight. If you're talking about a 180-pound person, then the total weight should be somewhere around 260, 280 of heavy load on your body. I know that can be difficult for many people. There are ways to go around this, but that's exactly what I do, helping people inside the Reforge Achilles system load the Achilles progressively, figure out ways to do that safely and within your ability. How exactly do my clients get results inside the Reforge Achilles system? Well, I use a protocol called the Tendon Strong Protocol, and it depends on the type of Achilles pain that you have. But both types of Achilles injuries, I always start off with isometrics, foot strengthening, and posterior chain strengthening. So we always start with mobility, and then we progress to strength, and then we progress to figuring out how to run. We can do all that simultaneously. But the difference lies in that with midportion Achilles tendinopathy, we've got to do eccentric loading, but heavier. So there's a technique known as heavy, slow resistance. And with heavy, slow resistance, the idea is that you cut down the volume. You only do the exercise 2 or 3 times a week to allow for that 72-hour recovery period. When you do the exercise, the tendon collagen will actually, the net collagen that you have in the tendon will decrease before bouncing back up into a net gain after 72 hours. So that's why you need that break. But in the meantime, you can still work on your foot strength, your ushers, your big toe, your ankle mobility, your posterior chain, and your glutes. There's so many different ways you can continue to lower your body while doing the heavy, slow resistance training. We'll do the same heavy, slow resistance training for insertional Achilles pain, but what's different is that we'll also add a calf raise that lowers the Achilles tendon with the weight out in front. And the weight out in front allows you to change the center of gravity to target the insertional site, because the way that the insertional area works is that you have a stronger tendon that's on the outside, normally comprised of type 1 collagen, which is super strong. It's exactly what you want. But on the inside, as it attaches to the heel bone, as it gets closer to the heel bone, it actually starts changing shape and material. It becomes more gelatinous. You have more nerve ingrowth and more blood vessel trying to heal the tendon, but nothing's really working because the stronger side is protecting the inside. So we've got to change the angle of the weight and the center of gravity to mechanically strain the interior portion of the tendon. That's the difference between Midportion Achilles tendinopathy and insertional Achilles. So if you want to get started right now, there's two things you can do: heavy isometric holds. The best way I've found to do heavy isometric holds is that if you have access to a light prep machine, load the light prep machine as heavy as you can that you can't actually move it, and then basically do a calf raise, trying to push the plate with only with your toes and hold for 30 to 45 seconds. You can do 3 rounds of those. Those are the best way you can get isometric loading. Of course, if you can't get a light prep machine, you can always do that sitting against a immovable object or standing with as heavy of a weight as possible. For heavy calf raises, I used to advocate for the 1 rep max approach, but that's complicated, and everybody knows how to use the 1 rep max, and it created a bit of a headache. So what I've done is I've changed the approach to what's called a repetition maximum. And basically what we do is we start with a bit more volume in the beginning, and with that volume, usually 3 sets of 15, so 15 repetition maximum. I want you to find the heaviest weight you can tolerate over 15 reps. Right? If you can, that means that you need to find a weight that you can't even do the 16th rep on. Okay, but you can do 15. So that's your starting weight. And then over time, as you progress, you're going to reduce the volume while increasing your weight. All right. So for example, we're going to do 13 sets of 15 reps at the heaviest weight you can do 15 reps on. Then we're going to do 3 sets of 12 with a slightly heavier weight, 4 sets of 10 with a slightly heavier weight, and going down all the way down to 5 sets of 5 at the heaviest weight, tolerate over 5 sets. The idea is that you want to progressively get heavy, but knowing that everybody's going to be different and how heavy they can go. And here's the most important part: you have to go slow. You have to go slow. So one of the best ways that I've found using the slow piece is to Google or on your web browser search for metronome, set it for 60 beats per minute, and follow that beat for at least 3 seconds up, then 3 seconds down. That's the tempo that I want you to do, and that's what research have shown, is that if you go slow, that will increase chances of more effective mechanotransduction. If you recall, that means that the chemical signaling process that tells the tendon to generate new collagen, then to remodel and clear out the old degenerative tendon. If you want the exact 12-week loading system that I just went through, but written out and give you 100% clarity that you can actually run yourself, I put it all in a guide called the Comeback Achilles Guide, and I'm making it $1, and everything's in that comeback guide, everything that you need, plus a additional loading protocol if you choose to want it. The link is in the description, and leave a comment if you've been doing eccentric heel drop for months or years. It only ever helps some. So tell me how long you've been doing these eccentric heel drops, and I'll respond to your comment. I'll read every single one of them. So appreciate you, and I'll see you next time.